hello. My name is Andrea and I'm here with...
Elle Cook, hi.
What inspired you to start writing and when did you realize you wanted to become an author?
I've always been a journalist. I used to work for retail magazines, and so I spent a lot of my days writing some lovely stories about new shops that were opening, and I'd get to go and visit new shops all across the world, which I loved. It was my dream job. It paid absolutely nothing, but it was my dream job. It was so much fun. And then a lot of my job was also writing about shops that were closing down, and that was the sad bit of my job. But I'd always been in that sort of world of writing, which I loved. I used to read for pleasure on the train going to and from work in London, and that was about as far as I thought my connection with the book world would go. I never thought I would be a writer. And then one day, quite a long time ago, my husband found a newspaper article about a village that had been taken over by the army in World War II in England. And all the villagers were kicked out of this village, and they were told they could return one day soon when the war was won. But actually, they never got to return. And the village was taken over for D-Day training practice. So this story really stuck with me, and I was so excited by it. And I thought I wanted to find some non-fiction books and some fiction books about this particular, very niche, particular element of English history. And I couldn't find anything. So I went down an internet rabbit hole where I kept searching and searching and searching. And then eventually I sort of created, it feels really mad to say this is how authors work. We just create stories in our head, which is not really very normal, sort of living a fantasy world. So I sort of created a story in my head about people who lived in this village and what would happen if one of them went missing just before they were due to leave and they were never allowed to return. And so that was the first book I wrote under my other name, Lorna Cook. And I never thought I would get it published, but I just wrote it for fun, just for me, just because I had this story in my head and I didn't know another way of kind of getting it out of my system. So I just wrote it down. And then I ended up on a publishing journey with it by getting an agent and getting a publishing deal. And after that, it was just a natural process just to keep writing. So that was my historical fiction. And I've written 6 under my other name, Lorna Cook. And then in lockdown, I had the idea for The Man I Never Met. I had a lot of time on my hands, other than the fact I was homeschooling 2 children, which was not fun. And so to escape that sort of terminal sitting around just doing English homework with children, this story came into my head. And I think if I hadn't been in lockdown with a little bit of extra time, I would never have written this novel because it wasn't historical. It was completely different for me. And it was nice to sort of have that time to think of different ways of storytelling and just something modern, contemporary, rather than historical, which is what I focused on. So that's kind of how I got into writing and how this novel came about as a sort of long result of that, really.
Can you share any significant challenges you have faced early in your writing career?
I have been really lucky in how quickly my publishing journey began. I guess my biggest challenge was I was self-employed and I didn't have any maternity leave, and I had a baby. And because I was self-employed, it meant I had to keep working and have a baby at the same time. So it all came around at the same time, and I was sort of writing and working and having a baby. And I think it's time. As most women know, time is never on our side. We have big to-do lists, and we spend a lot of time doing probably inconsequential things that don't really matter in the long run. And so I think a lot of authors struggle with time, and finding that time to sit down and actually write a novel I really have to force myself, because there was 101 things that I can do instead. So I think once I'd managed to say goodbye to my old job and my children grew up a little bit, that's probably when it got a bit easier, because I felt I could sit down and I could spend that time creating different worlds and it not really sort of take up, oh no, I should be doing this, I should be doing that instead, or I should actually be earning money somewhere else, So I think that's kind of the struggle with being a creative person, is sometimes you have to do jobs that are uncreative. So that's probably it, yeah.
What inspired the story or themes in your latest book?
So in The Man I Never Met, that was my husband. It was my husband's story, really.
For real?
Yeah, for real. So I don't want to give any spoilers away, but what happens in the novel to Davy, who is the main male character, what happens to him when he and Hannah look like they're really about to get together is what happens to my husband. And we were very lucky. We went in a different direction to the way things happened with Hannah and Davy for a while. No spoilers, but so the inspiration came from real life, from something that actually happened to me. And I've never put anything that's happened to me into a novel before. So this was the first one.
Which character do you feel most connected to, and why?
Ooh, I do love Hannah. And although Hannah is not me, because I'm not that cool, and not that laid back. I feel
Your vibes are giving Hannah vibes, really.
Oh, I love Hannah. I love Hannah. I think she was my first heroine, my main character I wrote, where she was really chilled, really laid back. So I think I relate to her a lot. And in the book, there is Joan, who lives next door, who is your kind of slightly crazy, slightly hip little old lady who drinks a lot of coffee and dates a lot. And I want to be her when I'm older. So I kind of relate in the future to Joan. And she was based on my neighbour who lived opposite me, who we looked after her for years, and she was just as fun as Joan. So yeah, when I grow up into a proper adult, I want to be Joan. I think I might relate to her a bit.
What do you think makes a story truly compelling?
I think real life situations, things that are believable, characters being believable, characters having conversations with their friends, with their partners that you might have already had, people doing realistic things, having realistic reactions to situations. I love meeting in other novels heroines and heroes who you love them, you fall in love with them, like you said at the beginning, like you want to be friends with Hannah. And that's kind of what I think helps as well, is like if they make terrible decisions. This is something I've had to learn to write well. If they make terrible decisions, you have to be able to understand why they're making that decision, even if you wouldn't make it yourself. So you can't have them be perfect all the time. That would be really unrealistic for a novel. And there will be no tension, there'd be no drama, there'd be no plot if they just bumble through. But you have to have them make decisions that you can either get on board with, or if you can't, you can understand why they do these things. So yeah, so I think that.
Could you mention a fun fact about yourself?
A fun fact, I suppose that I write under two names. People are always quite confused by that. I used to work for the government in England, and once upon a time I had to sign the Official Secrets Act, but it was for a very boring reason. But I think it's quite fun that I have signed that once upon a time. Yeah, just lots of different things that I love doing, really. I'm a really bad cook, but I love it anyway. Is it bad to do that? I'm a really terrible gardener and I love doing it anyway. I think I'm just a glutton for punishment. I do things that I love writing and I hope I'm quite good at it, but I'm very willing to do things I'm bad at and to keep going, because one day, maybe soon, I will be good at them.
Do you plan on writing books from other genres, not just romance?
Yes, well, the historical I've already got, but they are romance within the historical as well. So if you like what I write as Elle Cook, then the Lorna Cooks are not too dissimilar. We're just going back about 50, 60 years instead. Eventually, I feel I might write a crime thriller, but I'm a little bit busy doing the romancy stuff. So I have an idea in my head, but it's one of those things where I need a bit more time to think about it. But never say never. I love reading all genres, really. Some I don't. I'm not really into horror or fantasy. I've really tried, but I'm not into fantasy at all. I've tried so hard. But I think I love crime thriller and that sort of the Lucy Foley genre. I love that sort of Agatha Christie locked room. How could somebody have possibly killed somebody here because every door is locked? That sort of genre. I love that. So maybe one day, maybe, we'll see.
What is the story behind the book cover?
Oh, I love the cover. My lovely American publishers came up with this cover, and it's a bit different to the British one. I should have the cover of the British one here, but it's of no use to you anyway. But the cover of the American one is a bit like this. It's very similar to this, I think, with a few tweaks. But I love how they're going in different directions. I love how Hannah and Davy on the cover are just going in different directions, and they look as if they're destined not to meet. And that is sort of the premise of the book, is they get together. Will they meet? Won't they meet? When will they meet? Will it ever happen? And so when I saw the cover come through, I was so excited by this because it just sums up sort of one scene very perfectly, and it sort of does what it needs to do. Two people going in completely the wrong direction, but they should be going in the right direction.
In the novel, the characters are separated by distance and circumstances, but remain connected in unexpected ways. Do you believe that long-distance relationships can be as impactful as those that are physically close?
Yeah, I do. And I think there is something very special about that waiting to see somebody for a very long time. I think that people connect across the world now in so many unexpected ways, and it heightens the excitement and the tension, I think. And I remember when I went into my English publishers and met some of the team who were in charge of looking after the book. And one of the lovely girls came up to me and said, this book is so similar to how me and my partner got together. He was living in America, she was living in Britain, and they didn't meet properly for ages. They met online dating and they had Zoom calls to meet each other, but they didn't actually meet each other in real life until ages down the line. And I was so excited to hear that, because I got together with my husband when I was 18 years old, and the internet was barely around, and we certainly didn't have dating apps. And so there's an element to how I got together with my husband, which is so rare now. And it's lovely to see that what I wrote about in the novel happens to so many people across the world, especially during lockdown, where people were meeting each other online and they couldn't meet in real life for about a year. So they managed to sustain relationships without ever having touched each other, kissed each other, held hands, you know. So I think there's something really, really special about meeting online and then just moving to texts and WhatsApps or phone calls, and then video calls, and then that's what you have to live on for ages. And it is exciting. Like, people genuinely tell me when they get together with people like this, it's really exciting. I'm going to meet them for the first time ever. And, you know, but they've known each other for 6 months or something. So it's a different level of excitement. It's really fun. It's really, really exciting for them. I'm excited for people who meet like that.
The book dives deep into the idea of what might have been. Have you ever found yourself wondering about missed opportunities?
Oh, missed opportunities. I guess it's that. You've seen this film Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, you know, where she's running for a tube and then she misses the doors, and
yes,
it follows her in 2 directions. What would have happened if she'd got on the train, and what happened when she didn't get on the train? And I love how that resolves. So I love thinking about that quite often in so many of my everyday situations. If I miss a train or I miss a bus, or, you know, I don't get somewhere on time, I always wonder, I wonder what would have happened, you know, if I'd missed a flight or not missed a flight, that sort of thing. I love that. But in the end, I think I am also a firm believer in fate. I think things are meant to happen for a reason. I'm not very like woo in general, but I am. Things like when you try to buy a house and it gets to the very end and it doesn't work, and you can't buy this house for whatever reason, which is something that happened to me quite recently. And you mourn that loss. You're like, no, this was meant to be. But actually, after that, a nicer house comes along, and you think that's the house I was meant to have. And I know that's quite an extreme example, but I think in terms of missed opportunities, sometimes they happen for a reason. And what comes on after that is what you were really supposed to have. So I like to try and believe in that. It always seems to work out for me if I think that way.
Do you have some book recommendations?
A book that stuck with me, which isn't romance, if I'm okay to talk about. I read Gillian McAllister's Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I don't know if you have that in Romania. If you don't, you should. It's fantastic.
I shall Google it. Did you know from the start how the book will end?
I always know how my books are going to end. I always have a beginning, and I always have a middle, and I always have an end. And the bits either side of that are sort of like this as we get there, you know, and then back there again. So I always know how it's going to end. It's just how we get there. That's the fun bit. How we get there is the fun bit.
Does George resemble an ex of yours? It seems toxic.
George doesn't resemble an ex of mine. I just wanted George to be so perfect at the beginning, and so wrong for Hannah by the end. And he has so many hang-ups that they just weren't right for each other. He has so many hang-ups. He's just not right for her. At the beginning, he looks great. He's giving her lots of attention. He seems like a really great guy. Yes, he seems like a great guy. He works out, he's fit, he's fun, and then he becomes less fun and just becomes hard work. And that's I think that's true of a lot of men. But for her, he's not right for her at all. And, you know, Davy is.
Do you believe in true love?
I do believe in true love. I don't necessarily believe there is only one person for everyone. I used to think that, but I think having, you know, seen friends who've been married and you think it's right for them, and then they get divorced and they marry somebody else and they're the right person for them. So I think that maybe it's not that one person or no people ever again. I think it, but I do believe in true love, and I do believe you can fall in love quite quickly. And if you're on the same page as a person, and that you know, you feel they're your person, and I love that. I have that with my husband. I'm really lucky, and I love that for other people. I love like seeing true love. It's great. But there is always that phrase: you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince as well. So I always think, like, you know, when I've got a teenage daughter and I'm very ready to say to her when she falls desperately in love, and you think, well, you're very young, this might not be it, but then you never know. So, but I do believe in it. I love love.
What can readers expect from you next?
More romance, emotion, lots of romance, lots of emotion, hopefully lots of real life situations, hopefully falling as much in love with the new characters that they will do with Hannah and Davy. Yeah, I try and keep in the same sort of realm as when I write my Elle Cook novels. I try and keep in the same realm, you know, lots of love, lots of will they, won't they. That seems to be where I've ended up, in that sort of will they, won't they sort of dynamic, which I love. So yeah, lots of that. I love doing that.
And one last question.
Okay.
If you could offer one piece of advice to writers who are just starting out, what would it be?
Oh, just one piece. I could offer a few. Have a thick skin, because rejection is very hard. Rejection at the start is hard with agents and editors. Rejection by readers maybe every now and again. You might get a 1 star every now and again. You just have to suck it down and move on. I would say finding time. Always find yourself a little bit of space in the day if you can. It doesn't have to be every day. I find that if I can't write every day, I'm always thinking about the novel, and sort of at the weirdest times of day, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll wake up and I think, oh, this is what needs to happen. And then you have to try and remember it. So yeah, sit down and keep going, and don't just write one book and pin all your hopes on one book. If you can create a book, writing a book is hard. It's really hard. So if you can sit down, if you can create a story in your head and you can put it on paper, then you've done what hardly any other people in the world ever do, which is to finish a book. If you can finish it, give yourself a round of applause, because that is hard. And if you can do one, you can do 2. So if you're trying to get published, focus on that first book and finding the right agent, the right editors, you know, the right audience for your book, but also have a second book in the background, you know, the backup book. Because it might be that the backup book is the one that people want to read before the first book. So don't just do one and be like, yes, I've done it. But, you know, find some time, take a breather, move on to the second book, and just keep going. If you're writing, then you're a writer. You don't have to be published to be a writer. You are a writer if you're just sitting down and going for it. So just keep going. Just keep going is my big advice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
I hope you had a great time with me.
I did. It was nice. I love it. It was so much fun at this time of day. How fantastic.
Yes. And I'm really excited for you to come to Romania.
I would love that. That would be so good.
Again, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yes. Oh, well, I hope readers enjoy the book as much as you did. I really hope they do. And I think I've just really enjoyed the whole process. And it's been so lovely talking to you today. And it's nice to see my book out in Romania, in another part of the world, with this lovely shiny cover on it. And it's nice to bring Hannah and Davy to a lovely new audience as well. It's going to be so much fun to see how it goes.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, and to see you around.
Thank you.
And for our readers, read it. It's a must read.
Oh, thank you.